If you have North Node in Aries in the second house, there is a very specific lesson your birth chart is emphasizing. You are learning how to build something that is truly yours. And we're talking about much more than money. For example, the second house represents your personal resources, your income, possessions, values, self worth, stability, and the things you build and control for yourself. And your North Node is in Aries. So your growth comes through independence and initiative and courage and self reliance and learning to trust your own instincts. And because your North Node is in the second house, your South Node is automatically in Libra in the eighth house. And that gives you an interesting karmic axis. See, you're moving from shared resources towards personal resources, from dependency towards self sufficiency, from asking, what do we have, towards asking, what can I build? And this can be a major theme throughout your life. The Libra South Node in the eighth house can indicate that you're naturally familiar with the deep entanglements with other people, like shared finances, joint accounts, other people's resources, emotional merging, intense relationships, and being heavily invested in what someone else is doing. And sometimes there's a tendency to become very focused on maintaining harmony within those arrangements. And you may be extremely good at cooperating and compromising and sharing and negotiating and managing other people's needs. But here's where the lesson is going to be a bit uncomfortable for you. You cannot build your entire sense of security around what someone else provides. I mean, that does not mean that you shouldn't have a partner. It doesn't mean you should never share money. It does mean, though, that you have to do everything alone. That's not what this placement is saying. The lesson is more about developing the ability to say, even if everything outside of me changed tomorrow, I would still know how to take care of myself. That is so Aries North Node in the second house coded. You're learning to establish your own foundation here. And financially, this could be particularly important. I mean, you may be pushed towards developing your own income or your own savings, your own assets, your own business, or simply a much stronger relationship with money. Because the second house is going to ask, what do you have that belongs to you? And Aries says, go build it. I mean, this placement can be incredibly powerful for entrepreneurship because Aries doesn't want to wait around for someone else to create an opportunity. It wants to initiate, it wants to take action, it wants to say, I have an idea. I'm going to see what actually happens if I actually pursue it. But there's an even deeper layer here. The second house isn't just about your bank account, it is also about your self worth. And this may be one of the biggest lessons of this placement because you are learning to stop measuring your value based on what someone else thinks of you. You don't need someone to choose you in order to be valuable. You don't need to be financially supported to in order to be successful. You don't need an impressive relationship to prove that your life has value. And you don't need to constantly compare your life to somebody else's because your North Node is asking you to develop internal value. So, in other words, know what you're worth before somebody else tells you what you're worth. And this can create some interesting relationship patterns. I mean, with Libra South Node in the eighth house, you may be just naturally drawn towards what's the word? Intense partnerships. And you may crave deep emotional bonds and you may become deeply invested in another person's life. And sometimes you can continue intensity and security, or I'm sorry, confuse intensity with security. But your North Node says, don't lose yourself in the merging. You can love someone deeply and still have your own bank account, your own goals, your own values, your own possessions, your own identity, your own source of stability. That is actually a healthier for a relationship or partnership, because you're no longer entering the partnership or relationship thinking, I need you in order to be okay. You're entering it saying, I'm okay on my own and I choose to build with you. That's a completely different dynamic. There's there's also a lesson around values. Aries North Node in the second house is asking you to figure out what you actually believe, not what your family taught you, not what your partner believes, not what society says you should want, not what makes you look successful. What do you value? What kind of life actually makes you feel secure? What does financial freedom mean to you? What are you willing to work for? What are you no longer willing to compromise? And that's where Aries becomes extremely important, because Aries teaches you to make decisions based on your own convictions. So you may have spent a lot of time maybe asking yourself, what will make everybody happy? This is so your South Node here. Your North Node is asking, what is right for me? Now, there is a shadow side. So don't take this placement to mean that you're supposed to become obsessed with money and completely independent to the point of isolation or unwilling to share anything with anyone. That would be another imbalance, because your Libra South Node gives you valuable abilities of cooperation and diplomacy and partnership and negotiation, and the ability to create mutual beneficial relationships. You're not supposed to lose those skills. You're supposed to stop depending on them at the expense of yourself. And there's another major lesson here. Stop creating unnecessary crisis to feel secure. The eighth house deals with vulnerability and shared resources and psychological intensity, transformation, and also situations that force us to let go of control. And with the South Node there, you may sometimes be overly familiar with complicated emotional or financial entanglements, and your growth is towards something much simpler. Build stability, save the money, develop the skill, create the income, know your values, take care of your possessions, invest in yourself, and learn that peace doesn't have to come from controlling the outcome of a relationship. Sometimes peace comes from knowing I can stand on my own 2 feet. That's the real power of Aries North Node in the second house. So your life path isn't necessarily about becoming rich. It's about becoming self-sustaining. It's about developing enough confidence in your abilities that you don't constantly need someone else to provide the security you haven't learned to create for yourself. And eventually the goal becomes, I know what I value. I know what I'm worth. I know how to provide for myself. I know what belongs to me. And I can share my life with someone without surrendering my foundation. That's the evolution of Aries North Node in the second house. You're not here to prove your worth through what you can get from other people. You're here to discover what happens when you build your own value and then build a life around it.